Welcome back, everybody. Today we're doing a deep dive into the future of multiple sclerosis treatment and research.
Hmm.
We're looking at this really cool podcast, MS Through the Ages, From Mystery to Modern Medicine. Have you heard of it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's a great series.
It is. And today we're going deep on episode 3, Breaking Barriers, The Future Unveiled.
That's a good one. It really gets into all the exciting advancements that are happening right now.
It does. So we're here to kind of unpack what the future holds for MS, and it seems like things are changing pretty rapidly.
You really are.
One thing that really jumped out at me was the shift from just managing MS to potentially reversing its effects.
Right, that's a huge change in thinking.
It is. I mean,
Big
for a
one.
long time, it felt like the focus was on just slowing down the progression and managing symptoms.
Yeah,
But now it seems like researchers are actually trying to repair the damage that MS causes.
that's exactly right. It's pretty remarkable.
It's almost hard to believe. Repairing the damage, I mean, is that even
Hmm.
possible?
Well, it's definitely a work in progress, but there's some really exciting advancements happening. Like one area that's super promising is research on B cells.
B cells. I thought those were just part of the immune system.
They are, but it turns out they play a much bigger role in MS than we originally realized.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, you see, there are different subtypes of B cells.
Uh-huh.
And some of them can actually trigger the autoimmune attack that damages the myelin sheath.
So it's like our own immune system is attacking us.
Exactly. It's kind of crazy,
That
right?
is. And are there any treatments that target these B cells?
Yeah, so scientists have developed these targeted therapies called monoclonal antibodies, like ocrelizumab.
Okay.
And these antibodies can actually bind to specific proteins on those harmful B cells.
Oh, wow.
And that prevents them from attacking the myelin.
So monoclonal antibodies, I've heard of those, but I'm not really sure how they work.
Oh, sure. Well, just imagine them as like little guided missiles,
Okay.
and they basically seek out and latch onto specific targets.
So in this case, the harmful B cells are the targets.
Exactly. And then they kind of act like a flag, signaling to the body's immune system to destroy these rogue cells.
So they're not actually repairing the damage, but they're stopping further damage from happening.
You got it.
That's pretty amazing.
It is. And while preventing further damage is really important, researchers are also working on ways to repair the myelin that's already been lost.
That's where remyelination comes in, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what is that exactly?
Remyelination, well, it's basically the process of regenerating the myelin sheath that protects those nerve fibers.
Right.
And scientists are looking at a bunch of different approaches to make this happen. Some are using monoclonal antibodies, others are using oral agents like siponimod,
Okay.
and there are even some experimental compounds like PIPE-307 that are showing promise.
PIPE-307, interesting. So how do these treatments actually promote remyelination? I'm curious.
It's complicated, but I'll try to explain it simply. The central nervous system actually has its own natural repair mechanisms, but sometimes it needs a little boost.
Okay.
So some of these therapies actually work by stimulating the production of oligodendrocytes, which are the cells that make myelin,
Interesting.
while others focus on reducing inflammation and creating a better environment for the myelin to repair itself.
So it's kind of like giving the body's natural repair crew the tools they need to do their job.
That's a great way to put it. And it's working. Researchers are seeing a slowing of disease progression and even some restoration of function in studies. It's still early, of course, but super exciting stuff.
Wow, so we might actually be able to reverse some of the damage from MS.
That's the hope.
It's incredible to think about. Are there other big breakthroughs on the horizon?
Oh, absolutely. Personalized medicine is another one that's changing the game.
Personalized medicine, so what's that all about?
Well, it's basically using all these tools we have, like advanced neuroimaging, genetic profiling, even biomarkers,
Okay.
to create treatment plans that are tailored to each individual patient.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, so instead of a one-size-fits-all approach, doctors can actually look at a person's unique biology and create a customized treatment plan.
So it's like personalized healthcare specifically for MS.
Exactly. There's even this deep neural network that can predict lesion activity from MRI scans.
No way.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And that means doctors can choose the best therapy right from the start, which gives people the best chance of success.
It's like having a roadmap, but for managing your MS.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And then there's stem cell research.
Oh, right. Stem cells. I've heard a lot about that. How are they being used for MS?
Well, there's this procedure called autologous hematopoietic stem cell transplantation, or AHSCT.
Okay, that's a mouthful. What is that?
It's a bit complicated, but basically it involves resetting the immune system.
Resetting.
Yeah, using the patient's own stem cells. Think of it like rebooting your computer to get rid of a virus.
Okay, I can kind of picture that.
So in AHSCT, they use chemotherapy to wipe out the existing immune cells.
Oh, wow.
And then they give the patient a transplant of their own stem cells, which have been cleaned and purified.
So it's like giving the immune system a fresh start.
Exactly. And early results show some really encouraging results. Patients are seeing improvements in their ability to walk, reduce fatigue, just better quality of life overall.
That sounds like a game changer. But you said it's pretty intense, right?
Yeah, it is. It's a high-risk procedure, no doubt about it. There's chemotherapy involved, which can have some pretty serious side effects.
Right.
And there's always a risk of complications with any transplant. So it's definitely not for everyone.
I see. So it's not a cure-all, but for some people, it could be a really valuable option.
Absolutely. Especially for folks with really aggressive forms of MS who haven't had success with other treatments, it could be life-changing.
I can see that. So we've got all these cutting-edge medications, personalized medicine, stem cell treatments. Anything else researchers are looking at?
You wouldn't believe it, but there's even research on the role of diet in managing MS.
Really? Diet? What do you mean?
It seems like what you eat can actually impact how your MS progresses.
That's fascinating.
One area that's getting a lot of attention is the ketogenic diet.
Oh, the keto diet. I've heard of that, but I didn't know it was connected to MS.
Yeah, it's a high-fat, low-carb diet that's been shown to have a lot of health benefits.
Right.
And now some research suggests it could be helpful for people with MS, too.
Interesting. How so? What's the connection?
Well, it has to do with the gut microbiome, all the bacteria that live in our gut.
Right.
Well, it turns out they play a huge role in regulating our immune system. And there's more and more evidence that imbalances in the gut microbiome can actually contribute to autoimmune diseases like MS.
So the keto diet is somehow helping to rebalance the gut microbiome.
That's the idea. It's still early, but some studies have shown that the ketogenic diet can actually reduce inflammation
Wow.
and improve the quality of life for people with MS.
So it's not just about weight loss, it's actually impacting the immune system.
Exactly. And, it's important to remember that anyone considering big dietary changes should definitely talk to their doctor first.
Of course. But it's amazing to think that what we eat could have such a profound effect on MS.
It really is. Oh, and we haven't even talked about combination therapies.
What's that?
It's basically where researchers are looking at combining different treatments together to see if they can get an even better response. It's like attacking the problem from all sides.
That makes a lot of sense. So it seems like there's a lot happening in MS research. It's almost hard to keep up with it all.
It is. It's an exciting time to be following all the advancements.
It really is. But, research is only part of the story, right? What about the human side of this?
Absolutely. The stories of the people who are actually living with MS every day.
Right. That's what makes it all real.
Exactly. And that's actually what we're going to dive into in the next part of our deep dive.
Looking forward to it.
We'll be exploring all these powerful stories of resilience and community action that are shaping the MS landscape.
It's amazing how people are coming together to support each other and fight for a better future.
It truly is inspiring, so stay tuned.
We'll be right back after a short break. Yeah, it really is. All this research is giving us so much to be hopeful for when it comes to MS.
Definitely.
But I agree. We need to hear from people living with MS.
For sure. And this podcast we're looking at, they do a great job with that. Like Sarah's story.
Yeah, Sarah. I remember her. She had relapsing remitting MS, right?
That's right. Diagnosed in her 30s?
And she really turned her experience into something positive.
She did. Instead of letting the diagnosis define her, she became this amazing advocate for others with MS.
Yeah, and I remember how much she emphasized community.
Oh, absolutely. She talked about how important it was to connect with people who understand what you're going through.
Right, like people who get it.
Yeah. She ended up becoming a mentor for people who were newly diagnosed.
Wow.
Helped start local support groups, even spoke at conferences.
It's inspiring how she took her experience and used it to help others.
Totally. And then there's James, who was diagnosed with primary progressive MS.
Oh, yeah, James. His story was really powerful.
It was. And for me, it highlighted how important it is to adapt, find new ways to live a full life, even with MS.
I think he talked about how physical therapy and adaptive technologies helped him.
He did. He talked about using a cane and a walker.
All right.
And allowed him to stay active, to be independent.
That must have been huge for him.
It was. And he was also really into adaptive sports.
Oh, that's so cool. Adaptive sports are amazing.
They are. They give people with MS a way to push themselves physically.
And stay connected with others.
Exactly. James actually found a whole new community through adaptive sports.
It's great that he was able to find that kind of support.
Yeah, and speaking of support, there's Maria. She was diagnosed with MS while she was in college.
Oh, wow. That must have been really tough.
It was. And her story is all about the power of online communities,
That makes sense. It can be so isolating to deal with a chronic illness.
especially at a young age.
Exactly. So how did these online communities help her?
Well, she found a lot of comfort through virtual support groups and podcasts.
I bet.
She was able to connect with people from all over the world who are going through the same thing.
That's the beauty of the internet, right? It can connect you with people no matter where they are.
It really can.
Uh,
And it's not just about emotional support either.
uh-huh.
These communities offer practical advice, information.
Like tips on managing symptoms.
Yeah, exactly. Or how to navigate college life with MS,
Right.
or finding resources in your area. It's like a virtual support system.
It sounds like it. Okay, who else did we hear from?
Oh, there was Alakan, who decided to participate in clinical trials for new MS treatments.
That's pretty brave.
It is. But he really saw it as a way to contribute to something bigger than himself.
Yeah.
He wanted to help advance research.
That's really selfless.
Yeah, he understood that even if a particular trial didn't help him directly,
Mm-hmm.
it could still pave the way for future breakthroughs that could help others.
That's a great perspective. And it reminds us that research is a long process.
It is, and every single person who participates in a trial is helping to move us closer to a cure.
Absolutely. So who else is there?
Well, last but not least, there's Ramon.
Oh, Ramon,
Yeah.
the athlete.
Yeah, he was amazing. He kept competing at such a high level even after his diagnosis.
He was so inspiring. He showed that MS doesn't have to stop you from achieving your goals.
Totally. He had this powerful message about self-belief and redefining limitations.
Right. He adapted his training and found new ways to excel.
Yeah, he refused to let his diagnosis define him.
It's all about focusing on what you can do, right?
Exactly. And I think all these stories show the resilience of the MS community.
I really do.
But it's not just individual strength. This community is also coming together.
To advocate for change.
Right. And that's a whole other part of the story.
Yeah, we've talked about online communities, but what about offline?
Exactly. What's happening on the ground?
How are people coming together to advocate for better treatments, research, and support?
That's what we'll explore next. From grassroots organizations to awareness campaigns, there's a lot happening to try to make a real difference in the lives of people with MS.
Yeah, it's amazing how individuals can make such a difference. But I like what you said about a larger movement, collective action.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where advocacy comes in. There are all these organizations, all these people working so hard to raise awareness, trying to influence policy, is really trying to improve the lives of people with MS.
What are some of the things they're focused on?
Well, research is a big one. We've talked about the breakthroughs in labs, but making sure that translates into actual treatments.
Right, treatments that people can access.
Exactly. And advocacy groups are really trying to make that happen.
So how do they do that?
One way is by making sure that the research being done is actually addressing the most pressing needs of the MS community.
That makes sense.
A lot of these groups have patient advisory panels where people with MS can share their experiences and insights.
Oh, wow. So the patients themselves are helping to guide the research.
Exactly. It's bringing the voice of the patient into the process.
That's great.
And these groups are also fighting for more funding for MS research.
Okay, so they're not just influencing what gets researched.
Right.
They're making sure there's money to support it.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of access to treatment.
Right, because even if there are great new treatments available, not everyone can get them.
That's right. And there are a lot of barriers. Cost is a big one.
Yes, some of these newer therapies are really expensive.
They are. And insurance doesn't always cover them.
I can see that being a huge problem.
It is. And then there are logistical hurdles, too, like finding specialists.
Oh, right. I bet that can be tough depending on where you live.
It can. Or long wait times for appointments.
Right.
And sometimes there are even regulatory issues that delay the approval of promising new treatments.
So even after a treatment is developed, there's this whole other process to get it to the people who need it?
Exactly. And advocacy groups are trying to smooth out that process.
How so?
Well, they do things like lobby for policy changes.
Okay.
They negotiate with drug companies to try to get lower prices. And some even provide financial assistance to people who can't afford their medications.
It's amazing how much they're doing to make sure people can actually get the treatment they need.
It really is. But it goes beyond research and treatment, too.
Okay, what else?
It's also about creating a supportive environment for people living with MS.
That makes sense. Because it's not just about the medical side of things.
Exactly. A lot of these groups offer things like support groups,
Hmm.
emotional counseling,
Right.
practical assistance.
Like what kind of practical assistance?
It could be help with transportation or like home modifications.
Oh, to make their homes more accessible?
Yeah, things like that. And they're also trying to educate the public about MS.
That's so important.
It is. It's about challenging misconceptions and promoting understanding.
Creating a more inclusive world for people with MS.
Exactly. And they're using all sorts of strategies.
Like what?
Educational campaigns, fundraising events, grassroots organizing.
Wow. It's really about harnessing the power of community.
It is. And it's not just the big organizations either.
Okay, what else?
It's also about those everyday acts of kindness.
From friends and family.
Yeah. Sometimes those small gestures mean the most.
It's true. Just letting someone know you're there for them can make a big difference.
They really can. We all have a role to play.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive.
It has so much to think about.
We've covered so much. The research, the personal stories, the advocacy efforts.
It's been great.
And it seems like there's a lot to be hopeful for when it comes to MS.
There is. Research is moving so fast,
Yeah.
and the MS community is amazing.
What strikes me is this feeling of momentum.
I know what you mean.
Like we're on the verge of a new era in MS treatment and care.
I agree. And it's a team effort, the researchers, the doctors, the advocates, the individuals living with MS, they're all working together to make progress.
It's powerful.
It is. It shows that even with such a complex and challenging disease, there's hope.
And that together we can make a difference.
Absolutely. And for anyone listening who wants to get involved, there are so many ways to do that.
Definitely. We'll include some resources in the show notes for anyone who's interested.
Great. This has been a really great discussion. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.